Oh, shouting. No last words. Just a Monday afternoon. You sign a stack of papers thicker than any book you've ever left unfinished. She cries. The lawyer nods. You stay silent. And from that moment, you think you're free. But then, 3 months later, you're living in a temporary rental, the couch bought off Facebook Marketplace, your retirement account now, yours alone. No one manages it anymore. The warm home that once had your name on top signed over. And the savings you built up over 25 years, only half left. Even less. You're no longer hurt by that woman. What keeps you up at night? Are the numbers. The new paycheck that no longer covers 2 lives. And the most surprising part? Not the money, not the house, but the loneliness now has a clearer price than ever. You can't finance warmth. You can't borrow back a familiar greeting after work. So, you thought divorce would be a release. But have you really prepared financially, mentally, and with dignity for the life after it? Because today, we won't talk about divorce as a decision, but as a chain reaction, a slow wave that can sweep you far away from your present reality. If you don't know where you stand, then watch this video to get answers. They call it gray divorce. Divorce, not in youth, but with gray hair, after 50. When the kids are grown, when you no longer fight because someone made you angry, but fight because there's nothing left to say to each other. You might see them at the golf course on a Monday morning. A man standing still on the 7th green, just finished a putt, no applause, only wind and an abnormal quiet. They no longer fight over child custody, only over who keeps the fish tank, who stays in the house with the wool rug they both hated. And mostly, it's silence, silence that suffocates. Over the past 20 years in America, divorces after 50 have doubled, partly because people live longer, partly because kids have grown and left home, and partly because one person wakes up while the other stays stuck in old habits. No loud betrayals, no affairs, just distance, each step farther away. You look back at the dinner table, chairs still for 2, but for a long time, only one person truly sits, the other just there in body. And then, divorce. They say, divorce young, you lose love. But divorce at this age, you lose finances, safety, and if you're not careful, you lose your dignity too. Because no one asks how much you sacrificed. They just look at the account balance, the split assets, and the final question, how did he end up with nothing after 25 years? But there's one thing you do gain. Not money, not the house, but awakening. You no longer live out of obligation. You start to understand your silence has reason. You no longer jolt awake at midnight to the sound of a door opening. You sleep through the night, not because of happiness, but because your mind is no longer on guard. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in years you begin living for yourself. Though the price is not small. You think you're only leaving a person, but in truth you're splitting in half the life you worked to build. No one tells you that in the divorce hearing. No warnings, no bold print saying, after this morning, half of everything you've saved over 30 years will no longer be yours. Savings account split, pension split, 401k split. The house split, even the garage hooks you installed, appraised and split. And not just split, you pay extra. You pay lawyer fees by the hour. You pay asset division fees, appraisal fees, notary fees, and when it's over, you get a stack of papers. Neat, cold, legal. But it's still not over. You leave the place that was once home, move into a small apartment, no backyard to tend, no attic to store memories, just a few boxes, and the old leather chair you managed to bring. You think, renting at 60 isn't hard. And yes, it's not. But try once standing in a furniture store, choosing each spoon, each pan, each shower curtain. You'll understand. The exhaustion isn't in buying things. It's in starting over, when you no longer want to start over. Then social media. No one invites you to dinner like before. The couples group you knew now awkward about mentioning you. A few people send comforting texts, but no one truly asks, are you okay? And trust? In love, in marriage, in growing old together, it doesn't die, but it's bled out, bit by bit. One morning in a small coffee shop, The man next to you tells a story. He's 62. Once an engineer. Now drives Uber 5 days a week. Not because he needs money, but because he must send a fixed amount each month to the woman who no longer loves him. The law calls it alimony. He calls it a life sentence for a marriage that ended. And you sit there, holding your cooling coffee, asking nothing more, just staring out the window. Because deep inside, you know, you're no different from him. Only the timing of the story is different. You once believed once you left that marriage, you'd feel light. No more arguments. No more stone-heavy silences at dinner. No more frowns when you're 15 minutes late. Just you. And freedom. But 3 months later, you don't feel like flying. You feel like slowly sinking. The freedom you dreamed of, now tied to bills, rent, electricity, support payments, and the cost of simple meals, higher when no longer shared. You thought you'd have time for yourself, but your schedule is now fuller than when you were married. You work extra. You cut back. You juggle like running a business, just to keep yourself afloat. And the kids still call. Sometimes, but the conversations are shorter. They love you but don't really know how you're living. They're busy. You understand. But still, sometimes, you stare at the silent phone and feel inside you, as empty as the freshly repainted room after the last person moved out. You tell friends you're fine. You post photos hiking, cooking, playing guitar. Free, right? But at night, you sit at the table, staring at the unopened mail, and sigh. Because you know, I escaped that woman, but I've fallen into a financial contract with no end date. A deal stamped legal. An invisible commitment that you'll keep paying, even when you're no longer attached. And that's the truth no one tells you. Emotional freedom doesn't mean financial freedom. Sometimes, it's the quietest trap you step into yourself. If she stayed home raising kids, if your income was much higher, if the marriage relied mostly on your paycheck, then after divorce, you're not just splitting assets. You're committing to continue funding the life of someone who no longer loves you. And the hardest part? Not knowing when it ends. 401. Pension. What you contributed each month. Silently, steadily, thinking, this is mine. Until the court declares, both of yours. You're not angry. You're just numb. Because you planned retirement 10 years ago. Just, no one told you that plan now has to be cut in half. You once changed the porch light, shoveled snow in winter, tended the garden in summer. You were the one who bought it. But now, you're the one who leaves. Not because you want to, but because the court says you should. You can drive the pickup truck out of the garage, but you can't take with you the feeling of belonging. She needs support. You need a new place. Kids need tuition help. And you need something for yourself. But when all costs double, and income stays that of a man nearing retirement, you're forced to choose. And in most cases, you choose to sacrifice yourself. No one forces you. It's just you're used to carrying the whole family. Only now, it's no longer a family. Not because you're weak, but because you're used to living as half of a pair. Every decision once was we. Now it's just me. From buying insurance, to picking a fridge, from paying taxes, to remembering credit card due dates. Everything you must learn again. And the most painful truth isn't the money. It's you no longer control what you thought was yours. Because men aren't afraid of losing money. They fear most losing control, losing decision-making, losing initiative, losing the ability to choose for themselves. And sometimes, that feeling of being passive in your own life is what kills men. Slowly, but surely, money can be recovered. You can rebuild. Slower, harder, but doable. Honor cannot. When lost, it's not in numbers. It's in the eyes you see in the mirror each morning. You once were the one at the helm, the protector of the family, the one who knew what to do to keep the home steady without being told. You once handled everything from banks to lawnmowers. You were the pillar. You had a voice. You had respect. You were trusted. But after divorce, you're no longer the man of the family. You're the man who once had a family. Worse, you become the man asking permission to keep a piece of your old life. You file motions to the court to postpone support. You ask lawyers to renegotiate. You send income statements, proving you're no longer earning enough. You wait for responses from a system you no longer control. You, once the one who created the cash flow, now must present yourself like a borrower, not borrowing money, borrowing back the dignity that once was yours. Many men don't collapse because of losing money, but because they no longer believe they can start over. They lose initiative, lose the feeling of being good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. And then they begin to ask themselves, am I still trustworthy? To myself? You can stand in a meeting, wearing a suit, hitting every number, but inside, you feel like a man in a shirt that no longer fits. No one sees, only you know. Your grit has drained bit by bit. Since that day you walked out of the court, because honor, there's no paper to split, but it too can be lost. Piece by piece, night by night, each heavy breath as you call, asking to delay a payment you never once missed before. You're still a man. You can still rebuild. But no one tells you, the hardest part, after divorce, isn't the money. It's learning to trust yourself again. You can live separately, under the same roof, not to avoid, but to take back your breath. An upstairs loft, a back room, your own key, your own hours, and most of all, your own space, to not get pulled into repeating collisions. You can reset financial boundaries, separate cards, separate accounts, separate spending limits, not to control each other, but to not blend blindly into one another. You earn. You keep what you need. You share what you choose. And you don't let emotions run every transfer. You can restructure assets, not waiting for the court, not waiting for the lawyer. You can propose a postnup, a post-marriage agreement, to make things clear before it's too late. It doesn't kill love. It keeps love from turning into a financial war. You can find guidance before you're forced to save yourself. A coach, a financial expert, a friend who's been through it, not to hold on to what's gone, but to prepare well if the day comes when you leave. Because divorce isn't wrong, but divorcing in confusion is wrong. Divorcing in chaos is wrong. Divorcing without keeping dignity, self-respect, and some freedom, then the price isn't worth it anymore. No one forces you to stay. No one has the right to say you didn't try enough. But if you must go, go standing as a man who knows his steps. Not that you must stay, but go so you don't lose your fortune, don't lose your name, and don't lose your honor. In the end, it's not about who's right, not about who wins, not about who keeps more after divorce. The real question is how much you lost without realizing you once had it all. Freedom isn't leaving someone. Freedom is when you're no longer bound by your own anger, hurt, or regret. You can leave, but don't leave shattered. Leave as someone who has thought it through, awakened, prepared, and chosen the path of least loss, most kept for yourself. Because the truth is, men over 50 don't need lessons on love. What they need is enough quiet space not to lose themselves in emotional storms. You think you want to leave that woman, but what you really need is to come back to yourself. And sometimes that journey isn't in court, isn't in asset splits, isn't in the name on the deed. It's in this question: am I seeking escape, or am I needing to live true to myself without paying more? If you've been through those days, or are standing at its threshold, leave a comment. No need to be long. Just one sentence. Peace is what I don't bargain for anymore. You don't have to share this video with anyone, unless you think there's a man out there, sitting quietly in his car, who needs to hear this before it's too late.